Unity Congress of Workers' Party of Hungary. From Comrade RAKOSI's speech. From For a Lasting Peace, for a People's Democracy, number 12, in parentheses 15, Tuesday, June 15th, 1948. In his opening remarks at the Unity Congress, Comrade RAKOSI said, "The Congresses of the Workers' Parties, the Communist and Socialist parties of Hungary, adopted a unanimous decision to unite. This historic event is an occasion for joy and satisfaction, not only to the working people of Hungary, but also to the supporters of democratic progress throughout the world. In line with this decision, which marks a new epoch in the history of our country, we have gathered here to announce the fusion of the two fraternal parties, to discuss the problems of work of the new party and also the draft program and statutes of the party, which have been submitted to the Congress for consideration." Comrade RAKOSI then reviewed in great detail the international situation. He contrasted the growing contradictions and chaos in the anti-democratic imperialist camp headed by the USA and the growing strength of the democratic anti-imperialist camp headed by the Soviet Union. In a special section of his report, devoted to the work of the communist parties, Comrade RAKOSI said, "The growing strength of democracy is reflected also in the fusion of the forces of the 9 communist and workers' parties. Thanks to their exchange of experience and coordinated activities, these parties are waging with increasing success the struggle for peace and for the independence of the nations. The Communist Party of Hungary is proud of the fact that it too, thanks to the successes achieved in the course of 3 years of struggle, is numbered among the 9 parties. Being a member of this group of 9 communist and workers' parties naturally increases our international responsibility in the struggle for peace and democracy, and we shall spare no efforts to do justice to the joint work entrusted to us." Economic development. We can now confidently state that this year agricultural and industrial production will reach the pre-war level. The harvest prospects after 3 successive years of drought are good. The area under crops this year is the biggest ever within the present frontiers of Hungary. The soil has been thoroughly worked over, and the proportion of such crops as sugar beet and tobacco is growing. An area of 170,000 holds have been sown to sugar beet, that is, more than ever before. Even in the event of an average harvest, there will be 20 kilograms of sugar per capita of the population, which is 50% more than in the best pre-war years. In April, industrial output reached 97% of the pre-war level, and has now topped the 1938 figure. The output of steel, iron, aluminum, machinery, paper, chemical products, footwear and coal is now far in excess of the pre-war target. During the first 5 months of the current year, coal output was 15% above the last pre-war year, steel 12% higher, and iron 5%. Productivity of labor is increasing and discipline is improving. Labor emulation has stimulated production. The budget for the first 10 months of the fiscal year showed an increase in income of 100 million forints over expenditure. Unquestionably, the budget for the second fiscal year, prepared on the basis of a stable currency, will also show an increase in income over expenditure. Our war-devastated national economy is being rehabilitated along planned lines. 2/3 of the dwelling houses have been restored, and some 50,000 new houses built during the past 2 years. The 3-year plan is going well, and we can safely say that it will be completed in December of next year, that is, in 2.5 years. The results of capital investments for the first year of the 3-year plan show that target figures have been exceeded by 3%. Thanks to this economic progress, the standard of living of industrial workers had by May reached the pre-war level, and in heavy industry in the coal mining and textile industries had actually exceeded the pre-war level. Miners' wages are 30% higher than in 1938. We can declare with pride that in this respect we have overfulfilled the plan, and this year the standard of living will reach the indices which we had anticipated attaining only at the end of the plan. During the past 3.5 years, Hungarian democracy, headed by the Communist Party, has fundamentally changed the economic system of the country. The exploiters and capitalists have been caught in a vice, and a considerable part of industry and transport is now in the hands of the state. Of the 550,000 people employed in industry and transport, 472,000, or 86%, are working in the nationalized or other non-capitalist industries. Political consolidation of people's democracy. The liberation of the country put an end to the power of the big landlords and capitalists. Under the leadership of the Communist Party, power passed into the hands of the working class, the peasantry, and to that part of the bourgeoisie which was opposed to German imperialism and agreed to cooperate in abolishing the relics of feudalism. The outcome of the 3 years of struggle is that the working class and laboring peasantry hold power in Hungary. During the past 3.5 years, the working class, headed by our party, has proved its ability to govern the country. It has become the leading and decisive force and is recognized as such by the overwhelming majority of the people. This recognition brought into the party this spring thousands of social democratic workers. The correct policy of the communists isolated the right social democrats and brought about healthy conditions for the fusion of the two workers' parties. Cadres of party organizers were able, in a short space of time, to strengthen the party which developed ideologically and increased numerically in the process of the struggle. At the beginning of May, we had 6,242 party primary organizations, with a membership of 882,000. As is known, when we carried through the exchange of membership cards, new cards were not issued to thousands of former party members whom we considered unworthy of the party's confidence. Indicative of the growth of the party is the fact that during the first 4 months of this year, more than 200,000 people joined the party. 2/3 of this number came from Budapest. Prior to the fusion, the absolute majority of the workers in large enterprises in Budapest, 60%, belonged to the Communist Party. In Budapest alone, 340,000 copies of the party press are circulated daily, and on Sundays the sales reach 500,000. Since the liberation, the party publishers, Shikra, have printed more than 2 million copies of Marxist books. Party education is proceeding smoothly. During the spring, some 80,000 members attended different party schools or lectures. The social composition of the party is made up of 45% industrial workers and 35% peasants. This is the Communist Army which is now uniting with the Social Democratic, a measure which will be approved by the present Congress. At the same time, we must take note of our mistakes. We underestimated the resistance forces of reaction. We assumed that the enemy had been destroyed. As a matter of fact, he is still strong. There is again the danger of turning dizzy with success. Fusion of the two parties. One of the prerequisites for the fusion was that the Social Democratic comrades should adhere to the position of Marxism-Leninism. In accordance with this, we drafted a joint program which we submit to the Congress for consideration. This program not only analyzes international and domestic problems in the spirit of the teachings of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, but also outlines the tasks confronting the United Party, tasks which the United Workers' Party must complete without any loss of time. The other prerequisite was that the Social Democrats had to expel from their ranks those who by their activity had shown that they were enemies of unity of the Communist Party and the Soviet Union. This program is supplemented by the statutes of the party, the adoption of which will contribute to the organizational structure of the new party and still further strengthen the basic principles outlined in the program. The fusion of the two parties will considerably strengthen the foundations of Hungarian democracy. There will be less vacillation. Development will proceed apace, the tempo of restoration and prosperity of our country will quicken. It is too early as yet to predict what the membership of the party will be, but it will certainly exceed the 1 million mark. This contains the danger of inflating the party and of obliterating the demarcation line between the party and the working class. That is why we have considered it necessary to introduce stricter rules when accepting new members, and in this way ensure the healthy growth of the party. We are proud of the successes won during the past 2.5 years by Hungarian democracy under the leadership of our party. However, never must we forget that the starting point of all our successes was the fact that the Soviet Union and Soviet Army released the Hungarian people from their fascist chains, that the liberation struggle of the Soviet Union made it possible to crush the armed forces and state apparatus of reaction, and that the Soviet Union did much to help lay the foundation of our development and successes. The economic assistance of the Soviet Union rendered a great service to Hungarian democracy. Consequently, there can be no question of overestimating our own successes and forgetting about the starting point of our development. It is of vital importance to us to turn the party into a truly monolithic organization, imbued with a single spirit, a single desire, and a single will. It is imperative that the comrades who have come from the Social Democratic Party quickly master the theory of Marxism-Leninism and accept iron party discipline. If we follow a correct policy, the same development will take place in the Workers' Party, and enriched with valuable social democratic personnel, the party will quickly and successfully cope with the tasks, the realization of which was retarded because of a lack of forces. Struggle against clerical reaction. A priority task facing the Workers' Party is the taking over of the church schools by the state. We shall be most careful not to offend the religious sentiments of the people. The land reform deprived the church of thousands of acres of land, but this measure was not directed against religion. It was aimed against the big landowners. This is borne out by the fact that in the course of the land reform, we saw to it that the poorer clergy were provided with land. The Communist Party also came out against reaction which took cover behind the church. As a result of the party's correct policy, the religious-minded sections of the people have drawn closer to Hungarian democracy and the Communist Party. They give little credit now to the slander spread for 25 years about our party and see for themselves that the path of democracy is the correct path and the only way to the improved well-being of the people. The contradictions between Hungarian democracy and clerical reaction are of a political and not of a religious nature. As Bishop Ravas has stated, reaction, which is hiding behind a screen, quote, is gathering the discontented and opposition elements into its camp. Adhesion to their camp defines a political and not religious position, unquote. And, may I add, an anti-popular, reactionary political position, and every Catholic Democrat should know this. In view of this, a movement has begun in the Reformed Church, advocating that the Church take its place alongside the builders of democracy. The majority of the Catholic masses and part of the lower clergy connected with this demand, while the Catholic hierarchy is resisting it frantically. So far, Hungarian democracy has displayed considerable tolerance towards Cardinal Mindszenty's provocative policy. It has been tolerant in the hope that the positive and successful work of democracy would slowly but surely start the process of democratization also among the Catholics, as is now the case in the Reformed Church, and signs of which are becoming increasingly evident among the Catholics. But there is a limit to the patience of democracy, and anyone who abuses this patience and takes its self-control for weakness will learn that Hungarian democracy will be ruthless against all those who oppose the interests of the people. Hungarian democracy and the Hungarian Communist Party has placed on the order of the day the matter of bringing the schools under the state and hopes to solve this question in the spirit of accord and conciliation. Vital tasks. Another big matter, important for Hungarian democracy, is the reorganization of the National Independence Front on a broad, popular basis. The need for a united mass organization is clear. The National Front would put an end to the superficial cooperation between the parties. In this front, together with the political parties, a special place must be reserved for the big social organizations, the trade unions, cooperatives, and the organizations catering for women and youth. In the sphere of industry, we must secure an increase in productive forces of the country, extend planning and coordinate our plan with the economic plans of our neighbors. We must get down to the job of preparing a 5-year plan of economic development and a 10-year plan embracing electrification and irrigation. We shall reduce and, as far as possible, abolish income derived from exploitation. The establishment of a network of machine and tractor stations must be accelerated. The agricultural cooperatives, producers, purchasing and trading cooperatives, and so on, must be strengthened in every day. In the interest of safeguarding our national independence and territorial integrity, we must build up a democratic army and equip it with modern armament. The keystone of our foreign policy is friendship with the Soviet Union, close cooperation with the other new democracies, and an endeavor, in line with the Lenin-Stalin minorities policy, to settle with Czechoslovak democracy the matter of the Hungarians residing in Slovakia. The Hungarian Workers' Party regards the people's democracy as a specific, comparatively peaceful transition period to socialism. The Hungarian Workers' Party is fully conscious that a peaceful advance of the capitalist elements towards socialism is unthinkable. The restrictions placed on the capitalist elements, squeezing them out, and their gradual elimination will inevitably result in resistance on their part and will lead to a sharpening of the class struggle. To the extent that the big landholders and capitalists lose their economic positions, their social and political strongpoints, they will resort more and more to sabotage, espionage, conspiracy, and armed action against democracy. And although the working people, waging the struggle against reaction, have the state machine in their hands, they know that the struggle between the democratic forces advancing to socialism and the forces of reaction striving to restore capitalism will not be decided until the economic and political grip of the capitalist elements is removed, and so long as foreign imperialists continue helping to restore reaction. Consequently, the interests of the people's democracy require a strengthening of the organs of state security, the police, the eternal vigilance and fighting preparedness of the people, the working class, and the party. Concluding his speech, Comrade RAKOSI dwelt on the national character of the Hungarian Workers' Party. This party, he said, carries forward not only the old militant traditions of the Communist Party and all that is best in the 75 years fighting experience of the Social Democratic Party, it is also the successor to and has realized the great aspirations of our finest sons, the old Hungarian fighters for freedom, Kossuth, Petőfi, and Zancik.